the instrument. The rain in Seattle wasn't just weather. It was a mood, a perpetual gray drizzle that blurred the sharp edges of city skyscrapers, each one a glass and steel monument to ambition. In the penthouse suite of the tallest monument, Thorne Industries, the rain was merely a backdrop, a live action painting behind the man who owned the view. Elias Thorne stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, a silhouette against the bruised sky. At 45, his was a presence built on silence and calculation. His suit, a masterpiece of Italian tailoring, didn't just fit his form. It seemed to be an extension of his very essence, precise, expensive, and impenetrable. He held a phone to his ear, his voice a low, steady hum of pure authority. The Singapore deal closes at midnight. I don't care about their time zone. Richard, make it happen. The numbers are the only thing that matters. Always. The numbers. To Elias, they were the only true language. They were honest, unemotional, and absolute. People were messy, unreliable variables. But numbers? Numbers you could trust. Across the vast, minimalist expanse of the office, at a small desk tucked away like an afterthought, Maya Reeves was also speaking the language of numbers. Her fingers flew across her keyboard, a silent, frantic ballet transcribing his words, cross-referencing data on her dual monitors, her entire being focused on the stream of commands. She was 32, but in this context, she felt ageless, a fixture, part of the office's efficient machinery. She was a picture of invisibility. A faded, oatmeal-colored cardigan swallowed her frame. Her hair was pulled back into a simple, unassuming bun, not a single strand daring to stray. A pair of practical, unremarkable glasses dominated her face, their thick lenses obscuring the sharp, intelligent hazel of her eyes. She was, in every conceivable way, designed to be overlooked. Elias ended his call without a farewell. He never offered them. Conversations were transactions, and when the transaction was complete, so was the connection. He didn't turn from the window. Maya, the Henderson proposal. I need it in 5 minutes. His voice wasn't harsh. It was impersonal. The same tone he might use to address the smart thermostat. Her response was immediate, her voice soft but clear, never breaking rhythm with her typing. It's already compiled, printed, and on your desk, Mr. Thorne. I've also flagged 3 clauses on page 7 that require your attention regarding non-compete liabilities. Elias paused. He slowly turned from his view of the city, his sharp, blue eyes finally registering her presence in the room not as a person, but as a function that had just performed unexpectedly. It was a mild surprise one feels when a coffee machine suddenly offers a new, unprogrammed brew. Good, he acknowledged, the word sounding almost foreign on his lips. He walked to his obsidian desk and picked up the perfectly bound report. His phone buzzed again, a different, more melodic tone, reserved for high-value clients. His entire posture shifted. His shoulders relaxed a fraction, and a practice, charming warmth infused his voice as he answered. Mr. Henderson, I was just reviewing the excellent work my team has done on our proposal. Looking forward to discussing it over dinner tonight. Maya continued her work, but subtle tension crept into her shoulders. Dinner. The word landed with a weight he would never understand. She knew what it often meant. Of course, 8 o'clock at Serafina is perfect, Elias said into the phone, a smooth chuckle following. I'll see you then. He hung up. The charming facade evaporated instantly, replaced by his default state of cool efficiency. The transformation was chilling in its completeness. Maya, cancel my 7 p.m. briefing with the R&D team and arrange for a car to take me to Serafina at 7:30. She finally looked up from her screen, her gaze meeting the back of his head. Sir, the R&D briefing is crucial for the quarterly launch. Dr. Evans was very specific. He turned, cutting her off with a look that wasn't angry, just impatient, as if a useful tool had suddenly started making an unnecessary noise. Cancel it. He delivered the next words with the same flat tone, utterly unaware of the impact they would have. And Henderson is bringing his wife. It's an evening engagement. I can't show up alone. It looks unorganized, unbalanced. A cold dread pulled in Maya's stomach. She knew that phrase, evening engagement. It was corporate code for a spouse-required event. Her hand still completely on the keyboard. He continued, his eyes finally landing on her, but not seeing her. He was assessing a resource. You'll accompany me. 7:30, be ready. It's a business function. Take notes. Stay quiet, and ensure the conversation stays on track. Understood. It was an order, delivered with the same weight and consideration as his command to cancel a meeting. She was not a woman being asked to dinner. She was a piece of office equipment being assigned a new, temporary task. The humiliation was a quiet, internal scream. She felt the heat rise to her cheeks, grateful for the glasses that hid the sudden sheen in her eyes. Her voice was barely a whisper, a small, defeated sound in the immense, silent office. Understood, Mr. Thorne. Good. His dismissal was absolute. He turned his back once more, his attention already elsewhere. Now, the quarterly projections from the Berlin division. I want them before you leave. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Maya sat frozen, the hum of her computer the only sign of life. Her mind raced, a frantic whirlwind of panic, and a deep, familiar resignation. This was her life, to be invisible, until she was needed as a prop to complete a picture, to fill a seat, to balance an equation. Her eyes drifted down from her screen to her hands, resting on the keyboard. She noticed a small, faint ink stain on her thumb. Then her gaze dropped further, to her worn-out, comfortable flats and the hem of her simple, years-old dress. A dinner at Serafina. The name alone was intimidating. It was the most exclusive, opulent restaurant in the city, a place where the glittering elite saw and were seen, a place where the cost of an appetizer could cover her grocery bill for a week. This was more than an inconvenient request. It was a cruel joke, an invitation to step onto a stage where she knew she didn't belong, wearing a costume that was all wrong, for a director who saw her as less than an extra. He hadn't asked. He commanded. He hadn't considered her feelings. He hadn't considered her at all. The task of retrieving the Berlin projections felt Herculean. How could she possibly concentrate on data points and spreadsheets when the specter of the evening loomed so large? How could she walk into that restaurant under his cold, judging gaze and not shatter from the sheer awkwardness of it all? The suspense of the night ahead was a tight knot in her chest. This was no longer just another Tuesday. It had become a trial. And as she finally forced her fingers to move, typing in a command to pull up the Berlin files, one terrifying question echoed in her mind. How on earth would she survive it? The revelation, the walk from the sleek, black town car to the modest entrance of her apartment building felt like a journey between two different worlds. One world was all polished granite, whispered power and impossible expectations. The other was cracked pavement, the distant sound of a neighbor's television, and the comforting smell of damp earth from the potted plants on her balcony. Maya fumbled with her keys, her hand still trembling slightly from the lingering shock of Elias's command. The metallic jingle was a welcome, familiar sound, a key to a sanctuary he could never access. She pushed the door open and stepped into the warmth of her home. It was the antithesis of Elias's office, where his space was a showroom of cold minimalism. Hers was a lived-in library of cozy chaos. Books were stacked on every available surface. On the coffee table, overflowing from shelves, piled neatly beside a well-worn armchair. Lush green plants thrived in the afternoon light, filtering through the windows, their leaves a vibrant contrast to the gray Seattle day outside. The walls were adorned not with expensive art, but with framed prints of her favorite paintings and a few of her own older, more hopeful sketches. She dropped her heavy bag by the door with a sigh that seemed to come from the very depths of her soul. The weight of the evening pressed down on her, an anvil of anxiety. Serafina, the name alone was a synonym for a world that had never included her. She moved through her small living room on autopilot, her mind racing through the impossible task ahead. She stood before her closet, its door already ajar, as if in a silent plea. With a sense of profound inevitability, she pushed it open. Inside hung her uniform, a series of identical, practical cardigans in muted colors, a few simple, knee-length skirts, blouses chosen for their durability and ease of care, not for their style. It was the wardrobe of someone who wanted to be professional, reliable, and most importantly, unseen. Her eyes scanned the row of clothes, desperation growing. Nothing. There was absolutely nothing that whispered dinner at a billionaire's restaurant. At the very back, she found it. A simple black dress, bought years ago for a friend's wedding. She pulled it out, holding it against her body as she turned to the full-length mirror on the back of her door. The woman staring back at her was a ghost of that wedding guest. The dress, once elegant in its simplicity, now looked dated and sad. The black fabric seemed to absorb the dim light of the room, doing nothing for her complexion. Combined with her severe bun and those terrible glasses, she looked exactly like what Elias expected. A frumpy, hopeless secretary trying and failing to rise above her station. A prop, a tool. A hot tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek before she could stop it. She quickly wiped it away, angry at herself for the weakness. This was her reality. This was the life she had chosen, the armor she had willingly donned. The glasses that helped her see the world clearly were the same ones that hid her from it. The practical clothes that allowed her to blend into the background were the same ones that erased her. Her gaze drifted from the mirror to her dresser, to the small, intricately carved wooden box that sat on its surface. It was a beautiful object, a stark contrast to everything else in her functional room. She hadn't opened it in months. Some days it was too painful. Today, the pain of keeping it closed seemed greater. She walked over and lifted the lid. This was not a box of memories. It was a box of a ghost. Her ghost. There were no photographs inside. Instead, nestled on a bed of velvet, were the artifact of a life she had buried. Her fingers first brushed against a hairpin. It was not a simple clip, but a work of art, crafted to look like a graceful wave of sterling silver, tiny freshwater pearls caught in its curl. It was cool and heavy in her hand. A memory, sharp and visceral, flashed behind her eyes. Herself, years younger, had thrown back in laughter in an art gallery opening, her hair down and flowing, this very pin holding a stray strand from her face. She could almost feel the warmth of that night, the buzz of possibility. Next, she lifted a delicate silver bracelet, its design modern and fluid. It had been a graduation gift to herself, a promise of a future filled with creation and beauty. Then, her fingers found what she was both dreading and seeking, a pair of contact lens cases. She looked from the beautiful objects in her hands to her reflection in the mirror. The woman in the cardigan, with the tired eyes and the defeated posture. The woman who had traded her dreams for stability, her identity for invisibility, to care for her ailing father. The medical bills had been a tidal wave, and her dreams were sandcastles. She had become Maya the reliable, Maya the efficient, because the world had needed that from her. The artist, the woman who appreciated beauty, had been packed away in this box. But tonight the armor felt like a cage. Elias's command hadn't been an invitation. It had been an indictment of her entire chosen existence. He saw the armor and thought it was all there was. A new feeling began to push aside the despair. It was a spark of pure, unadulterated defiance. It wasn't about impressing him. It was about reclaiming herself, if only for a single night. She would not go as a secretary. She would go as herself, the self she had locked away for safekeeping. The decision was made, with a resolve that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. She began to undo the bun. Her chestnut hair, freed from its confines, fell in soft, natural waves around her shoulders. She carefully inserted the contact lenses, blinking as her world came into a new, sharper focus without the barrier of glass. The face in the mirror was already changing. She applied a touch of mascara, a hint of lip color, not a mask, but a highlight, a restoration. She slipped into the black dress. It looked different now. Simpler, yes, but also more elegant, a blank canvas. She clipped a beautiful silver and pearl pin into her hair, a deliberate act of rebellion. She fastened the bracelet around her wrist. It felt like coming home. She looked in the mirror. A stranger stared back. A confident, poised woman with intelligent, clear eyes and a quiet strength in her expression. The transformation wasn't theatrical. It was a revelation. She had not become someone else. She had simply unveiled the person who had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. The goddess wasn't a new creation. She was a rediscovery. At 7:29 p.m., a sleek black town car idled at the curb. Inside, Elias Thorne checked his Patek Philippe watch, his expression one of profound impatience. Tardiness was a form of incompetence, and he had never known Maya to be incompetent. The rear door opened. He didn't bother to look up, already preparing a curt remark. "You're cutting it exceptionally close, Maya. I expect my instructions to be followed with precision." He finally glanced up, his words dying instantly in his throat, the reprimand forgotten. The woman settling into the plush leather seat opposite him was breathtaking. The soft, ambient light of the car's interior sculpted her face, revealing high cheekbones and a graceful neck. The thick glasses were gone, and the eyes that met his were a striking shade of hazel, full of a quiet intelligence and a depth he had never glimpsed. Her hair, no longer imprisoned in that severe bun, framed her face in soft waves, the silver pin catching the light like a secret. This was not his secretary. This was a vision. Elias Thorne, a man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals without a flicker of emotion, was completely and utterly speechless. He could only stare, his mind struggling to compute the impossible equation before him. Her voice, when she spoke, was the same, yet entirely different. It was calm, steady, and carried a new resonance. "The traffic was light, Mr. Thorne. We'll be on time." The car pulled away from the curb, carrying them both into an evening that had suddenly become utterly unpredictable. The only sound was a whisper of the engine and the deafening silence of Elias's astonishment. The unmasking. Serafina was not merely a restaurant. It was an experience meticulously crafted to awe. The entrance was a discreet, unmarked door of aged bronze that gave way to a cavernous space that seemed to swallow sound and light, only to reflect it back as a soft, golden glow. The ceiling soared into darkness, for which descended intricate chandeliers that looked like frozen constellations. The air itself smelled of money, of polished leather, rare orchids, and the subtle, expensive perfume of the clientele. Elias moved through this world on autopilot, his body performing the familiar rituals of power, while his mind remained trapped in the limousine. Staring at the woman walking beside him, he mechanically introduced her. "Arthur, Clara, this is my associate, Maya." The word associate felt foreign and utterly inadequate on his tongue. Mr. Henderson, a robust man in his 60s, with a genial smile and shrewd eyes, shook her hand warmly. His wife, Clara, was a vision of elegant grace, her sharp, kind eyes missing nothing. They exchanged pleasantries, but Elias's focus was fractured. He was acutely aware of Maya's every movement. She wasn't hiding behind him or looking at the floor. She stood with natural poise, her posture straight, but not stiff, her smile polite and genuine. She accepted the menu from the sommelier with a quiet, "Thank you," that seemed to genuinely appreciate the service, not just expect it. The first course arrived, seared scallops on a bed of saffron-infused cauliflower puree. Elias picked up his fork, his movements robotic. He was waiting for the misstep, for her to fumble with the array of cutlery, to say something out of turn, to reveal the frumpy secretary beneath the stunning exterior. The tension was a live wire running up his spine. It was Clara who broke the ice, turning to Maya with genuine curiosity. "So, Maya, how long have you been with Thorne Industries?" Maya set her water glass down precisely. "Almost 5 years now, Clara." She used the first name naturally, effortlessly matching the older woman's friendly tone. Clara's smile widened. "And what is it you do there?" Elias here is famously tight-lipped about his brilliant team. He likes to keep his treasures hidden, it seems. Elias opened his mouth, ready to interject with his standard deflection. "She handles administrative efficiency," a phrase designed to end the inquiry. But Maya spoke first. Her voice was clear and carried a new, confident weight that commanded attention. "My primary focus is operational logistics and contract analysis," she said, and Elias felt a jolt of surprise. She wasn't lying, but she was reframing her entire existence. "I particularly enjoy deconstructing the risk projections in our international agreements. It's like a very high-stakes puzzle." Arthur Henderson leaned forward, his fork hovering midair. This was not the quiet, note-taking shadow he had expected Elias to bring. This was a person who spoke his language. Is that so? He boomed, intrigued. What was your take on the liability clauses in the proposal you sent over? Quite conservative, I thought. Elias froze. The seared scallop on his fork suddenly felt like a lead weight. This was a direct, dangerous line of questioning. One wrong answer, one hesitant stumble, an entire carefully constructed image of Thorne Industries' infallible strategy could crack. He prepared to smoothly intercept, to take control of the conversation, as he always did. But Maya didn't even glance his way. She met Arthur's gaze directly, her hazel eyes calm and focused. They were intentionally conservative, Arthur. She spoke with an authority that left no room for doubt. Given the recent volatility in the European energy market, a more aggressive stance would have exposed your company, not ours, to a potential 17% higher risk factor based on the modeling we ran on last quarter's data. We believe presenting a foundation of stability was a stronger selling point for a long-term partner like yourself. A profound silence settled over the table. Elias could hear the faint clink of crystal from another table. He was staring at her, his mind reeling. She hadn't just parroted the conclusion he dictated. She had articulated the reasoning with more clarity, confidence, and strategic insight than he could have mustered. She had done more than answer the question. She had reframed the entire negotiation as a protective measure for Henderson's own benefit. Arthur's face broke into a wide, delighted grin. He slapped the white tablecloth with a hearty laugh. Elias, you devil, you've been hiding your secret weapon. Clara, did you hear that? 17%. She's sharper than my entire board of directors. He looked at Maya with newfound respect. A puzzle, you say? I'd say you solved this one brilliantly. Clara smiled, her eyes twinkling as she glanced from Elias's utterly stunned face to Maya's composed one. I rather think she's everyone's secret weapon tonight. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur for Elias. Courses came and went, a delicate truffle risotto, a perfectly cooked filet mignon, but he tasted none of it. He was a spectator at his own event. He watched as Maya engaged with the Hendersons, not as a subordinate, but as an intellectual equal. She discussed art with Clara, revealing a knowledge that went far beyond casual appreciation, and debated emerging markets with Arthur with a sharp, informed perspective. She was radiant, intelligent, and completely in control. The woman he had dismissed as a piece of office furniture was the star of the evening, and he was the one fading into the background. During dessert, a delicate chocolate fondant, Clara gestured with her spoon towards Maya's hair. That is a breathtaking hairpin, my dear. It's a work of art. Maya's hand flew to it, a fleeting shadow of vulnerability crossing her features for the first time that evening. Thank you. It was my mother's. She was a silversmith. Clara's expression softened. It's exquisite. She had a tremendous talent. Maya's voice grew softer, more personal. She did. She always said that true value isn't assigned. It's inherent. You just have to know where to look. She said it not to Elias, but to Clara. Yet the word struck Elias with the force of a physical blow. True value isn't assigned. It's inherent. His entire life, his entire philosophy, was built on assigning value, to stocks, to assets, to people. He decided what was valuable. He assigned the numbers. The idea that something, that someone, could possess value simply by existing, independent of his assessment, was a concept so revolutionary it felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. The dinner concluded with Arthur enthusiastically shaking Elias's hand, declaring the deal practically done, and insisting that Elias bring his astounding associate to all future negotiations. The praise was meant for Elias, but it landed on him like an accusation. The limousine ride back was steeped in a thick, heavy silence. The rain had started again, streaking the darkened windows with liquid light. Elias wasn't impatient or cold anymore. He was contemplative, unmoored. He looked at Maya, who had subtly retreated into herself, staring out at the passing lights of the city, the goddess once again receding, leaving behind a woman who seemed tired. He couldn't bear the silence any longer. His voice, when he finally spoke, was uncharacteristically quiet, almost hesitant. You never said. Maya had turned from the window. Her expression was unreadable, a mask of professional calm, but her eyes held a deep, ancient weariness. You never asked, Mr. Thorne. The car glided to a stop not at the usual convenient corner, but directly in front of her modest apartment building. The sight of it, so ordinary and out of place in the context of their evening, felt like another punch to his gut. Elias found himself fumbling for words. The Hendersons were very impressed. I'm glad the business function was a success, sir, she replied, her voice flat. She moved to get out, her hand reaching for the door handle. An impulse, foreign and urgent, gripped him. It was more than curiosity. It was a desperate need to understand the chasm between what he had seen and what he had been blind to. Wait! She paused, her hand on the latch, but she didn't turn back to look at him. He struggled, the master language suddenly tongue-tied. How did you know, he finally managed, about the 17% risk factor? I hadn't finalized that analysis. I hadn't even seen the full data set from Berlin. This time, she slowly turned to face him. And in that moment, she wasn't a secretary or a stunning goddess. She was just a woman, exhausted by the immense weight of being perpetually unseen. Her gaze was direct, and in it, he saw the truth he'd been too arrogant to notice for 5 years. Because I built the model, Mr. Thorne, she said, her voice quiet but clear, each word precise, devastating dagger. I built all of them for the last 2 years. The quarterly projections from Berlin are on your desk. You'll find my conclusions in the appendix. Good night. She exited the car without another word, closing the door with a soft but final click. She walked into her building and disappeared, leaving Elias Thorne alone in the silent, opulent limousine. He wasn't just surprised or impressed. He was completely and utterly unmasked. The king in his glass castle had just realized his entire empire was built on a foundation he had never bothered to see. The scene, the silence in Elias Thorne's penthouse office the next morning was a different kind of quiet. It wasn't the serene, powerful silence he cultivated. It was a stunned, hollow silence, heavy with the echo of a shattered worldview. He had arrived before dawn, the city lights still glittering like scattered diamonds below. Drawn to his desk by compulsion, he didn't understand. He wasn't working. He was sitting motionless in his chair, staring at the Berlin quarterly report. It lay open before him, not to the executive summary he always demanded, but to the appendix, a section he had never once, in 5 years, bothered to read. His Patek Philippe watch ticked softly on his wrist, a metronome measuring the passage of life he was suddenly reevaluating. His eyes scanned the pages, not with their usual rapid, dismissive efficiency, but slowly, painstakingly. The analysis was breathtaking. It wasn't just a compilation of data. It was a narrative. It wove together market trends, geopolitical instability, supply chain vulnerabilities, and consumer sentiment into a coherent, terrifyingly accurate prophecy. The conclusions weren't just stated. They were argued with the fierce, logical elegance of a master chess player seeing 10 moves ahead. And at the bottom of every page, in a small, discreet font, were the initials, M.R. Maya Reeves. The name echoed in the silent room. Maya, who fetched his coffee. Reeves, who organized his files. The woman whose value he had assigned as efficient, reliable, replaceable. The numbers he worshipped had been whispering her true worth to him for years, and he had been too arrogant to listen. A montage of the past 5 years flashed behind his eyes. The memos that had landed on his desk were solutions to problems he hadn't even fully articulated. The complex deals that had somehow closed with surprising ease. The lucky breaks and sudden intuitions he credited himself with. He saw now the invisible hand that had been guiding it all, smoothing his path, building his empire while he took the credit. He hadn't employed a secretary. He had been partnering with a visionary and treating her like a clerk. The shame was a physical sensation, a cold, leaden weight in his stomach. He thought of her faded cardigans, her relentless efficiency, her quiet acceptance of his dismissals. It wasn't a lack of ambition. It was a posture of someone who had already given up, who had buried a brilliant mind under a mountain of necessity and grief. She had needed the job, the stability, the health insurance he provided, and she had made herself indispensable on his own shallow terms, knowing he was too blind to see the depth of what he truly had. The intercom on his phone buzzed, its sound unnaturally loud and profound quiet. It was her voice. The professional, neutral, utterly capable tone was back. The goddess from Seraphina had been packed away once more. The armor was back on. "Mr. Thorne, your 915 is here. Shall I send them in?" He didn't hear a secretary. He heard the most valuable asset his company would ever possess, and he had nearly lost her to his own ignorance. His voice, when he found it, was rough, scraped raw by a night of realizations. "No, not yet." He swallowed, the words feeling alien. "Maya, please, come in here." There was a long pause on the other end, a beat of surprise. He had never said please to her before. "Yes, sir." The door opened. Maya stood there, exactly as she had for 1,000 other mornings. The oversized cardigan, the severe bun, the glasses that once again hit her expressive eyes. She was the picture of the invisible woman. But Elias could no longer see the costume. Now, he saw only the woman wearing it. He saw the intelligence instead of her mouth, the resilience in her posture, the profound sacrifice her chosen invisibility represented. He stood up, a movement that felt more significant than simply rising from a chair. He didn't stand behind his desk, using it as a barrier of power. He walked around it and stood across from her, an equal in the space they shared. "Why?" It was the only word he could manage, the only question that mattered. It contained 5 years of blindness, a night of shock, and a dawning, horrifying understanding of his own failings. Maya understood the entirety of the question. She stepped fully into the office, closing the door softly behind her, sealing them in this new, uncharted territory. "My father was sick for a long time," she began, her voice even, as if she were stating a fact from one of her reports. "The medical bills, they were a bottomless pit. I needed a job that was stable, reliable, with guaranteed health insurance. This job offered that. This persona offered that. It was safe. I couldn't afford to be the artist or the dreamer or the risk-taker. I had to be the one who was always there, always dependable. I needed you to see me as indispensable, but not as a threat, not as someone who wanted your job. So I let you see exactly what you wanted to see, what was most useful to you." Elias listened, truly listened, for the first time. He heard the story not as an excuse, but as a statement of fact. A brutal, strategic decision made from a position of no good choices. "I saw it all wrong," he said, the admission feeling like a stone leaving his chest. "The value wasn't in your efficiency. It was in you, your mind, your resilience. I was so blind." Maya offered a small, sad smile, one that held no malice, only a weary truth. "You saw what you were looking for. Most people do." Elias took a step closer. The space between them was no longer that of a boss and an employee. It was a space between two people, one of whom was finally asking to see the other. "What if I want to look for something else?" The emotional tension that had crackled between them for days resolved into something quiet, powerful, and profoundly human. This was not a romantic overture. It was a plea for redemption. It was one person finally, truly, choosing to see another. He gestured vaguely toward the report on his desk. "The Berlin analysis, it's revolutionary. The insights on emerging market saturation. You should be leading the R&D team, not canceling their briefings." "I appreciate that, sir. But," she started, the old habit of deflection taking over. "Elias," he interrupted, his voice soft but firm. "Please." She paused, absorbing the use of his first name. Another wall dismantled. "Elias, I'm content where I am." "No, you're not," he said, with a conviction that surprised them both. "And I can no longer be content with wasting a mind like yours on managing my calendar." He took a breath, the words forming a plan that felt more right than any billion-dollar deal he had ever brokered. "I'm creating a new position, head of strategic innovation. You'll report directly to me. You'll have your own team, your own budget, and a mandate to pursue the kind of projects you just outlined in that appendix, with a salary and an equity package that reflects your actual worth. The worth I was too much of a fool to see." Maya was speechless. This wasn't promotion born of pity or guilt. It was the deepest form of respect. He wasn't offering her a gift. He was correcting a catastrophic error in his own valuation. He was finally reading the appendix. She looked at him, and for the first time, she saw past the billionaire, past the arrogant boss. She saw a man humbled, awakened, and genuinely trying to learn. She slowly reached up and took off her glasses. She didn't need them to see him clearly anymore. "Yes," she said. The single word was quiet, but it carried the weight of 1,000 resigned mornings and the promise of a new beginning. 6 months later, the Thorne Industries boardroom was buzzing with a new energy. The long, polished table was surrounded by executives, but the focus was not at the head. It was at the center. Maya stood before a sleek digital display, leading the meeting. She was dressed in a tailored, emerald green suit that spoke of confidence, not camouflage. Her hair was down, styled but not stiff, the silver wave pin holding back one side. She was presenting her flagship project, a comprehensive green energy initiative that would not only be profitable, but would fundamentally reshape the company's environmental footprint. Her voice was passionate, sure, and commanded absolute respect. Elias sat not at the head of the table, but to the side, watching her. He didn't look like a man who had lost his secretary. He looked like a man who had found his partner. He listened, he nodded, he asked clarifying questions. He was learning. The camera of the mind focused on Maya's face as she articulated her vision, her hands moving with certainty. She was no longer unseen. She was no longer a tool. She was a force, her inherent value not just recognized, but celebrated. She had not changed who she was. The world around her, starting with one man's shattered perception, had finally changed to see her. The transformation was complete.